Saxena, who is now joining us from San Jose. Over to you, Kritika.
Well, joining me now is Shantanu Narayen, Chief Executive Officer of Adobe. Shantanu is coming right after the Digital India panel, right here on CNBC-TV18. You know, Shantanu, your first thoughts. You were at that panel, you heard Prime Minister Modi's comments, you heard all the tech giant comments. Your comments were very precise. You seem very bullish on India. But, you know, do you feel that we are closer? We are moving away from the talk phase and we are closer to execution, or is there still a way? It's more about the optimism that is there right now.
Well, I think, Kritika, it's all about, laying out a vision, which I think the Prime Minister did, and how do we execute on it? And I think, from my point of view, India is abundant in the one thing that's the most important, which is human capital. And so I think technology is going to disrupt and is going to transform companies, and I'm very bullish about what it can do for India.
Okay, so Prime Minister has showcased in many ways the Make in India, the Startup in India, the Digital India campaign, and that needs players like Adobe, players like Google, Microsofts of the world to come in, pitch in and aid, bridge the gaps that are there in the system. What is Adobe doing, or where can Adobe contribute when it comes to the government's Digital India drive?
Well, I think there are two ways in which we can contribute. The first is when you talk about paper to digital, the thing that's actually transforming paper to digital is PDF. There is no other format in the world that enables people to take a paper-based process and transform it digitally through PDF. So that's one way in which we're helping. But I think the other more important thing, and the President and the Prime Minister touched on this, is the whole aspect of design. And empowering citizens. And when you think about design and empowering citizens, what Adobe stands for is changing the world through digital experiences. And there isn't a website in the world, there isn't a mobile application in the world, there isn't a piece of video in the world. CNBC is a huge customer of ours where Adobe software is not used. So I think the way we can help is enabling that design mindset in addition to everything that we've done on the engineering side.
The question I want to understand is India ready for innovation? We have innovative entrepreneurs, we have the talent, but the regulatory system is such that most people have their hands tied. And I think I've asked everyone, I asked Satya that, I asked Chambers that. Do you think that we are ready to be able to focus on growth, remove the regulatory hurdles behind us? And, you know, I know there are too many questions in one, but if you were to put aside or point out two specific areas that you would like softened in terms of regulation, what would that be?
Well, I think we're different in that when you think about Adobe's investment in India, and we have really large research and development facilities in both Noida and Bangalore, it's all about attracting people. So I think I would always say the more talent we can get in India, the more educational institutions that teach science as well as STEAM, the arts aspect as well, that's probably the biggest inhibitor to any company really growing in India. I think what the technology industry is phenomenal at is we will, work around any bureaucracy, whether that's in the US or in any other country. As long as we get access to the right people and the right ideas, I think we'll bring their ideas to life. And one of the things I think we did very differently and distinctly with Adobe was we said we were going to have our engineers there work on all the cutting edge stuff. And if you look at the patents we filed, if you look at the new products that have been developed, if you look at mobile and how that's changing it, I think empowering even Adobe employees in India to showcase their best work for a global market, I think that's what differentiates us. Okay, so
you're talking about Digital India, of course. The Prime Minister's motive of coming here is to bring in investors like yourself, like Adobe, to increase their investment. So would you now, listening to the Prime Minister, would you now increase your investment? Would you look at India differently than you did before? I mean, I know nothing changes in 3 days, but the kind of efforts that are being put into place, would this make you increase your capital?
Well, I think what the Prime Minister is trying to do is actually two things. The first is he's saying invest in India with respect to developing software. And, that's clearly something that Adobe has been doing for a long time. We have ambitious plans as we grow globally to continue our growth in India. I think the other unique thing that we heard a lot about today is that the ability for US companies to help transform India through digital technology, it's also a marketplace for us right now. And it's a marketplace for every other company that was on the stage. And I think that's a unique thing which as that unfolds and India becomes a larger indigenous market for people to sell software, I think that only bodes well for India.
Okay, so how much would Adobe look at investing in India? Take a 3 or 4, 5-year time frame. What are the kind of investment?
Well, we have very large investments already in India. As I said, we just opened 2 brand new facilities, absolutely state-of-the-art in both Bangalore as well as Noida. And we're coming up to our annual planning cycle. And you know, when we talk about multi-year investments, that happens typically with the annual cycle. So I can certainly tell you that we are excited about it. Unfortunately, I can't give you numbers right now.
I predicted that, but let me understand in that case, you already have 2 significant development centers. The very majority of the innovation and R&D work is functional out of India for Adobe as a whole. Will that keep increasing? And how large would India be? If you look at the overall R&D market, where does India fit into Adobe's global footprint?
Well, our headquarters are here in Silicon Valley, and I think the Prime Minister came to Silicon Valley because there's something in the water here in Silicon Valley that makes us as innovative as we are. And so we're continuing to invest fairly significantly in Silicon Valley. The company is on a tear. Adobe's been doing really well. We're the first company to transform ourselves and move to a completely cloud-based mechanism of distributing software. And so I think we will continue to invest across each of our regions. I think India has a unique place in that as Asia Pacific emerges as a bigger growth opportunity, and it's not just India, but it's Australia and it's China. We do a lot of that research and development in India. So actually India is now stepping up to not only serve the Indian market and the US market, but as we go more towards delivering software for enterprises, a lot of that support also comes from India. So exciting plans.
So it's India and China neck to neck right now in terms of the R&D center, or does China?
India has far more investment.
Far more investment.
Yes.
I mean, even in the long term, India would have more investment if you compare to the other emerging geographies for Adobe's plans?
For Adobe specifically, we actually had a strategic plan to have our global R&D centers in just a few countries. India made the cut, so we really don't have a presence right now in China.
Okay, so let me ask you then about acquisitions. We're talking about growth, we're talking about Adobe's plans for growth. In that case, there are many innovative startups, cloud-based startups, disruptive technology startups that have suddenly taken off. There's a lot of interesting acquisition opportunities there. So startup, big or small, where would you like to, if you've made the acquisition plunge, where would you like to probably get the fit right?
Well, we look for 2 things when we look at acquisitions. Very simple. We look for technology and we look for people. And it doesn't matter where on the planet they are. If they have great technology and they're great people, we'll acquire them.
Okay.
Honestly, India, we haven't seen as many companies in the space in which we are in digital media and in digital marketing. But, you know, our appetite, we've just bought a bunch of companies in France. We have a company we just bought in Switzerland over the last few years. So we'll go where the talent is. So as long as you nurture those startups and make them great acquisition candidates, we'll come looking.
Okay. I know you can't reveal numbers, but how has the growth been in the last 1 odd year for Adobe in India? And going forward, would you expect that now that things are picking up in terms of, and even the overall IT ecosystem has changed now, we are moving towards a new paradigm of technology. We're in the robo age at this point in time. Self-driven cars are out. So given the kind of innovation that is happening, would you expect the growth multiple to increase in the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, I think our growth is completely predicated on the global economy.
Yeah.
And we have a financial analyst meeting coming up in a few weeks where we will outline how the overall available market for Adobe solutions are only growing. And as long as they're growing, as I said, India is one of the key development centers for us. The Bay Area is another huge center. We have one in Lehigh in Utah and New York. And so we'll keep investing as long as we get great talent.
Okay. Last couple of quick words from you, Shantanu. The one question I am asking everyone is, Prime Minister's effort to come over here is, of course, to eventually create a Silicon Valley in India. The sense is that we're in the transition phase and we need to act upon this particular phase. Do you believe India has what it takes in the short term to medium term to actually build a Silicon Valley-like ecosystem? As you said, there's something in the waters here. So could there be something in the waters in India as well?
I think everybody all around the world is trying to replicate Silicon Valley. And I think what makes the Valley so special, I think, are 3 things. First is great universities. And so you need universities of the caliber of Stanford and Berkeley. Access to capital. And there's infinite access to capital for a great idea here. And the ability and the tolerance for risk. And so I think if India wants to emulate Silicon Valley, and, frankly, a low barrier to starting a startup.
Yeah.
And so if they replicate those four things with human capital, investment profiles, the ability to tolerate risk, which I think exists, as is evident from all of the Indian companies, and, environment that encourages that risk-taking, there's nothing that says it's not going to thrive in the Indian soil either.
Okay, but do you feel that, that point that you raised about startups, is that it is still, the startup ecosystem hasn't opened up yet. Do you believe that
I think it's changed dramatically actually over the last year. If you look at valuations, if you look at the investment profile of, there isn't a venture capital company on Silicon Valley Road, that is not investing in India. So I think there's been actually a dramatic shift when the exits happen. In other words, companies that are founded in India either go public or get acquired, that will then spawn a whole new generation of entrepreneurs who will know somebody in one of those companies and says, I want to do that myself. And so there's nothing like that, excitement of saying, I know somebody who was in a company that did well, and I should be able to do that. That I think, creates this virtuous cycle.
Okay, as you said in the beginning, Shantanu, we are at a point of turnaround. What would be the 3 to 4 key things that the government needs to immediately look into from a regulatory point of view before they actually look to the next phase of growth?
I keep going back to this notion of people. I think, if you get great people need to know how to innovate. And so I really actually think it continues with an emphasis on education as well as an emphasis especially on design. Because I think design is going to be that next frontier. And I think the other key criteria is going to be for companies that are successful, how do you make examples or showcase out of that? Because that'll spawn a whole new generation of it. So I don't think there's anything fundamental in the system that's going to preclude, the next great company from coming out of Noida or Bangalore or Mumbai or Pune. And I'm excited to hear all about it.
Okay, last question then. I know there's no crystal ball here, but a timeline as to when you can say that India has reached the point of creating a strong digital ecosystem, has walked the talk.
Well, I think the services industry takes a while, right, to create. And if you look at the companies of the ilk of Infosys and TCS and Wipro, they're absolutely global brands.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking for, quick successes only. I think you want to build a sustaining culture, and I think that evolves over 5 to 10 years. But what's the hurry? You want to create something that's sustaining and lasting, and isn't that what Indian culture is all about?
So 5 to 10 years roughly?
I think so.
All right, Shantanu, thank you so much for speaking to CNBC-TV18. Pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much, and you've had a busy day with the Prime Minister.